They accused her of selling state secrets to foreign agents. The Pentagon translator sat silently as they dismantled her life piece by piece, unable to defend herself without blowing a cover that had taken years to build. Then the heavy oak doors burst open, and the director of the CIA walked in with 2 words: stand down. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we begin this story of hidden loyalty and dangerous deception, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they are. The Pentagon's E-Ring conference room embodied the weight of American military power. Mahogany panels lined the walls, heavy curtains blocked the Virginia sunlight, and the American flag stood at attention in the corner like a silent witness to the proceeding. The air conditioning hummed with bureaucratic efficiency, while fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the polished conference table. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat alone at the defendant's position, her hands folded calmly in her lap, despite the storm of accusations swirling around her. At 34, Elena carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years navigating dangerous waters. Her dark hair was pulled back in a professional bun, and her simple black suit gave no hint of the extraordinary life hidden beneath its conservative exterior. The charges being read against her were devastating: unauthorized access to classified materials, suspicious contact with foreign nationals, potential violations of the Espionage Act. Each accusation hit like a physical blow, but Elena's expression remained perfectly neutral, her dark eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond the committee members' heads. Colonel James Rutherford, the hearing officer, adjusted his reading glasses and cleared his throat. Dr. Vasquez, you have served as a senior translator in the Pentagon's Foreign Language Division for 8 years. Your security clearance has granted you access to some of our nation's most sensitive communications intelligence. Elena nodded once. Yes, sir. During this time, our investigation has revealed a pattern of behavior that raises serious questions about your loyalty to the United States. Rutherford's voice carried the weight of someone who had prosecuted many cases of espionage over his career. Would you care to explain why your personal communications show repeated contact with individuals later identified as foreign intelligence operatives? Elena's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I cannot discuss the nature of my personal communications in this setting, sir. The prosecutor, Miss Patricia Morse, a sharp-eyed former federal attorney with a reputation for taking down spies, stood and approached the evidence table. Dr. Vasquez, we have documented over 40 instances in the past 3 years where you accessed classified materials outside your designated work area. Can you explain this behavior? My work sometimes requires flexibility in terms of location and timing, Elena replied carefully. Flexibility that happened to coincide with your meetings with known foreign agents, Morse pressed. Elena remained silent. General Marcus Webb, the senior military official overseeing the hearing, leaned forward with obvious frustration. Dr. Vasquez, your silence is not helping your case. These allegations are extremely serious. We're talking about potential treason charges. For the first time, Elena's composure cracked slightly. A flash of something, pain, anger, resignation, crossed her features before the mask returned. I understand the gravity of the situation, General. Morse activated a large monitor at the front of the room, displaying a series of photographs. These images were taken by FBI surveillance over the past 18 months. They show you meeting with Viktor Petrov, a known Russian intelligence officer, on no fewer than 12 occasions. The photographs were damning. Elena, sitting across from a distinguished older man in various Washington, D.C. locations, coffee shops, park benches, restaurant booths. In several images, she appeared to be passing documents or receiving small packages. The defendant's position as a senior translator gave her access to intercepted communications from multiple foreign governments, Morse continued, her voice rising with prosecutorial fervor. Communications that, if compromised, could jeopardize ongoing operations and endanger American lives overseas. Elena stared at the photographs of herself, her expression unreadable. She knew exactly what those images showed, but she also knew what they didn't show. The context that made all the difference. The context she couldn't reveal without destroying years of painstaking work. Colonel Rutherford consulted his notes. Dr. Vasquez, bank records show deposits to your account that don't correspond to your Pentagon salary. Payments of $5,000, sometimes $10,000, appearing regularly over the past 2 years. What is the source of these funds? I cannot discuss my financial arrangements, Elena replied. Cannot or will not? General Webb demanded. Both, sir. The hearing room fell silent, except for the hum of air conditioning and the scratch of stenographers recording every word. Elena could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on on her from all sides. These people colleagues she had worked alongside for years now looked at her as a traitor, a threat to everything they had sworn to protect. Morse approached Elena's table directly, her heels clicking against the polished floor with predatory precision. "Dr. Vasquez, are you familiar with the case of Ana Montes?" Elena's eyes flickered with recognition. Ana Montes had been a Defense Intelligence Agency analyst who spied for Cuba for 16 years before being caught and sentenced to 25 years in prison. "Yes," Elena said quietly. "Like you, she was a trusted translator with access to highly classified materials. Like you, she maintained contact with foreign intelligence operatives. Like you, she received unexplained payments for her services." Morse paused dramatically. "Are you following in her footsteps?" Elena's hands clenched into fists beneath the table, but her voice remained steady. "I am not Ana Montes." "Then explain these meetings with Victor Petrov. Explain the payments. Explain why you accessed classified files outside your normal duties." Morse's voice rose with each demand. "Explain why you're destroying your career and potentially committing treason rather than simply telling us the truth." Elena looked up at her accuser, and for a moment, something dangerous flashed in her dark eyes. "Some truths are more important than careers." The cryptic response only seemed to infuriate Morse further. "Your truth or Moscow's truth?" Before Elena could respond, Colonel Rutherford called for a brief recess. As the room emptied, Elena remained seated, staring at the photographs that showed her with Petrov. To everyone in this room, those images told a clear story of betrayal and treachery. But Elena knew the real story. She knew that Victor Petrov wasn't just a Russian intelligence officer. He was also a CIA asset who had been feeding information to the United States for over a decade. She knew that the documents she appeared to be passing him were actually disinformation, carefully crafted to mislead Russian intelligence about American capabilities. She knew that the payments in her bank account weren't from Moscow, but from a CIA slush fund used to maintain deep cover operatives. She knew that her unauthorized access to classified materials wasn't espionage, but the carefully orchestrated work of a cryptanalyst whose real job was to analyze Russian communications and feed carefully selected intelligence back through Petrov to his handlers. Elena knew all of this, but she couldn't say any of it, because doing so would blow her cover, expose Petrov as a double agent, and destroy an intelligence operation that had taken 6 years to build and had already prevented 2 major terrorist attacks on American soil. So she sat in silence, watching her reputation be destroyed one accusation at a time, knowing that the truth would have to remain buried no matter what it cost her personally. When the hearing resumed, General Webb's tone had grown noticeably colder. "Dr. Vasquez, we've reviewed your personnel file during this break. Your performance evaluations have been exemplary. Your colleagues speak highly of your work. Your security clearance has never been questioned before." He paused, studying her face carefully. "Which makes your current situation all the more disappointing. A woman of your talents and background, choosing to betray the country that trusted her with its most sensitive secrets." Elena's throat tightened, but she said nothing. Morse resumed her presentation with enlarged copies of intercepted communication. "These are encrypted messages sent from Dr. Vasquez's home computer to email addresses traced to Russian intelligence servers. The encryption is sophisticated, suggesting professional training in covert communications." The messages displayed on the screen were indeed encrypted, strings of seemingly random numbers and letters that meant nothing to the untrained eye. But Elena recognized the cipher one she had been taught at the CIA's training facility in Virginia, designed specifically for communicating with assets in hostile environments. "Furthermore," Morse continued, "we have testimony from Dr. Sarah Chen, a colleague in the Foreign Language Division, who observed the defendant working unusual hours and acting secretively about her assignment. Dr. Chen, a nervous-looking woman in her 40s, was called to testify." She avoided Elena's eyes as she spoke. "Elena started coming in very early and staying very late. When I asked what she was working on, she would deflect or change the subject. It wasn't like her. She used to be very open about her projects." Elena watched her former colleague testify against her, understanding the position Sarah was in, but feeling the sting of betrayal nonetheless. Sarah didn't know about Elena's real work. Couldn't know, but her observations were still damaging. "Did you ever observe Dr. Vasquez accessing materials outside her normal assignments?" Morse asked. "Yes," Sarah replied reluctantly. "I saw her looking at Russian military communications that weren't part of any translation project I knew about." "How did she explain this?" "She said she was doing background research to better understand context for future assignments, but it seemed excessive." Elena closed her eyes briefly. Every word of testimony was technically accurate and completely damaging to her cover story. The irony was that she had been doing exactly what she was supposed to be doing, her real job as a CIA cryptanalyst, operating under deep cover within the Pentagon. Colonel Rutherford reviewed more evidence as the afternoon wore on. Financial records showing showing the mysterious payments, travel records showing Elena's trips to cities where Russian intelligence was known to operate, communication intercepts showing coded messages between Elena and known foreign operatives. Each piece of evidence, viewed through the lens of espionage, painted a damning picture. Elena could see the case building against her like storm clouds gathering on a clear day. The only thing that could save her now was the truth, and the truth was the one thing she couldn't reveal. As the sun began to set outside the conference room windows, casting long shadows across the mahogany panels, General Webb prepared to deliver what everyone assumed would be Elena's final chance to defend herself. Dr. Vasquez, the evidence against you is overwhelming. You have repeatedly refused to explain your actions or provide any legitimate justification for your behavior. This committee is prepared to recommend immediate termination of your security clearance and referral to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. He paused, studying her face one more time. However, if you are willing to cooperate fully, to explain these meetings and communications, there may be room for leniency. This is your final opportunity to tell us the truth. Elena looked around the room at the faces of people who had once trusted her, respected her, considered her a valuable member of their team. Now they saw her as a traitor, a threat to national security, someone who had sold out her country for money. She thought about the terrorist attack in Chicago that had been prevented because of intelligence she had fed through Petrov. She thought about the planned assassination of an American diplomat in Moscow that had been stopped because of her work. She thought about the dozens of other operations, large and small, that had succeeded because she had maintained her cover and done her job. And she thought about Director Michael Harrison, somewhere in CIA headquarters in Langley, probably watching this hearing through classified channels, knowing that he couldn't intervene without exposing the operation, but hoping that she would hold the line just a little longer. Elena straightened in her chair and looked General Webb directly in the eye. Sir, I have served my country faithfully for my entire adult life. I cannot and will not discuss classified operations in an unsecured setting. That is my final answer. The room erupted in frustrated murmurs. Several committee members shook their heads in disgust. Morse gathered her papers with an air of victory. Colonel Rutherford began preparing what everyone assumed would be the final recommendations for Elena's prosecution. That's when they heard it. The sound of heavy footsteps in the corridor outside, moving with military precision. Multiple sets of feet, walking in formation. The murmur of radio communications, barely audible through the thick oak doors. General Webb frowned and glanced toward the entrance. We're not expecting anyone else. The footsteps stopped directly outside the conference room. There was a moment of absolute silence, as if the entire Pentagon had suddenly held its breath. Then, the heavy oak doors burst open with authority that made everyone in the room snap to attention. Director Michael Harrison of the Central Intelligence Agency strode through the entrance, flanked by two senior CIA officials Elena recognized but had never publicly acknowledged. Harrison was a tall, imposing man in his 50s, with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades making life-and-death decisions in the shadows. "Stand down," he said, his voice cutting through the stunned silence like a blade. The transformation in the room was immediate and absolute. Colonel Rutherford stood so quickly he knocked over his water glass. General Webb's mouth opened in shock. Morse dropped her papers, scattering them across the floor. Director Harrison surveyed the room with the calm authority of someone who answered only to the President of the United States. His eyes found Elena, and for the first time in hours, she saw something other than accusation and suspicion in someone's gaze. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "you are in the process of destroying one of the most successful intelligence operations in CIA history." The silence that followed was so complete that the hum of the air conditioning sounded like thunder. Elena remained perfectly still, hardly daring to believe that her nightmare might finally be ending. Harrison approached the evidence table where all the photographs and documents were displayed. "Dr. Elena Vasquez is not a spy for the Russian Federation. She is a CIA cryptanalyst operating under deep cover and has been for the past 6 years. General Webb found his voice first. "Director Harrison, with all due respect, we have overwhelming evidence that Dr. Vasquez has been in contact with Russian intelligence operatives and has received payments from foreign sources. You have evidence that she has been doing exactly what I ordered her to do," Harrison corrected, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Viktor Petrov, the man you believe to be her Russian handler, has been a CIA asset for over a decade. The meetings you photographed were intelligence exchanges sanctioned at the highest highest levels of the United States government. He pointed to the photographs of Elena and Petrov meeting in various locations. Every one of these meetings was approved by me personally. The documents Dr. Vasquez appears to be passing to Petrov were disinformation, carefully crafted to mislead Russian intelligence about American capabilities. Morse, still trying to process this reversal, stepped forward. The payments to her account come from a CIA operational fund used to maintain deep cover assets, Harrison finished. Dr. Vasquez's apparent wealth was necessary to maintain her credibility with Russian intelligence. They needed to believe she was being well compensated for her treachery. Elena finally allowed herself to breathe. 6 years of careful preparation, 6 years of building a cover identity, 6 years of living a lie to serve her country, and it had nearly been destroyed by people who didn't know the truth. Harrison continued his explanation, addressing the committee members who were still trying to understand how they had been so completely wrong. Dr. Vasquez's real work involves analyzing Russian military communications and selectively feeding intelligence back to Moscow through Petrov. This operation has prevented multiple terrorist attacks on American soil and has given us unprecedented insight into Russian intelligence capabilities. Colonel Rutherford, still standing at attention, asked the question everyone was thinking. Sir, why wasn't this committee informed of Dr. Vasquez's actual status? Because the operation required absolute compartmentalization, Harrison replied. The fewer people who knew about Dr. Vasquez's real role, the safer she was, and the more effective the operation became. Your security investigation threatened to expose not only her, but an entire network of assets that have taken decades to develop. Elena watched as the reality of the situation sank in around the room. These people had been prepared to destroy her career and possibly send her to prison for espionage. Now they were learning that she was actually a hero, someone who had sacrificed her reputation and personal relationships to serve her country in the most dangerous possible way. General Webb sat down heavily, the weight of what had almost happened clearly affecting him. Dr. Vasquez, I owe you an apology. We all do. Elena shook her head. You were doing your jobs, General. You saw evidence of espionage, and you acted on it. That's exactly what you should have done. Director Harrison placed a supportive hand on Elena's shoulder. Dr. Vasquez's dedication to maintaining operational security, even when it meant being accused of treason, exemplifies the highest traditions of intelligence service. She could have revealed her true status at any time during these proceedings, but doing so would have compromised ongoing operations and endangered American lives. He turned to address the committee directly. The operation that Dr. Vasquez has been running will now have to be shut down because of this exposure. Years of careful preparation and dozens of intelligence coups will be lost. But that's not her fault. It's the fault of a system that failed to recognize when one of our own people needed protection. Elena felt the weight of that loss. The Petrov operation had been the most successful assignment of her career, and now it was over. But she was alive, free, and her name was cleared. Under the circumstances, that felt like a victory. Morse, who had spent hours building a case for Elena's prosecution, now faced the humbling reality that she had been completely wrong. Dr. Vasquez, I feel I owe you more than an apology. I accused you of being a traitor when you were actually a hero. Elena's response was gracious. You were working with the information available to you. I can't fault anyone for that. Director Harrison gathered the scattered papers and photographs from the evidence table. These materials contain classified information about ongoing CIA operations. They'll need to be secured immediately, and this entire proceeding will need to be classified at the highest levels. Colonel Rutherford nodded. Of course, sir. What about Dr. Vasquez's status here at the Pentagon? That will depend on Dr. Vasquez, Harrison said, looking at Elena. She can return to her cover position as a translator, or she can transition to a new assignment that doesn't require deep cover. After what she's been through today, I think she's earned the right to choose. Elena considered the option. Returning to her old life would mean more years of pretending to be something she wasn't, more years of isolation and secrecy. But it would also mean continuing the work she loved, the work that made a real difference in protecting American lives. I'd like some time to think about it, she said finally. Of course, Harrison replied. Take all the time you need. As the committee members filed out of the room, many stopped to shake Elena's hand or offer personal apologies for what she had endured. The transformation from accused traitor to recognized hero was complete, but Elena knew it would take time to process everything that had happened. Dr. Sarah Chen approached hesitantly, clearly struggling with guilt over her her testimony. Elena, I had no idea. If I had known, you did the right thing, Sarah, Elena assured her. If you had seen suspicious behavior and not reported it, that would have been a real problem. Your testimony was accurate based on what you observed, but I helped build a case against you for treason. Elena managed a tired smile, and in doing so, you helped prove that our security systems work. People are watching, people are reporting suspicious activity, and people are taking threats seriously. That's exactly what we want. As the room emptied, Elena found herself alone with Director Harrison and his two senior officials. The weight of the day's events finally began to settle on her shoulders. How long have you known about this investigation? She asked. 3 weeks, Harrison replied. We tried working through back channels to shut it down, but the evidence against you looked too compelling from the outside. We couldn't intervene without raising more suspicion. Elena nodded, understanding the impossible position he had been in. So you had to let it play out. Until we absolutely couldn't anymore. If this committee had voted to recommend criminal charges, we would have had to expose the operation to save you. As it stands, we can shut it down more quietly and extract you with your reputation intact. One of Harrison's officials, a woman Elena knew only by reputation, stepped forward. Dr. Vasquez, what you did today, maintaining operational security even when facing espionage charges, will be remembered. There are very few people who would have held the line under that kind of pressure. Elena thought about all the sleepless nights, all the times she had wanted to tell friends and family about her real work, all the sacrifices she had made to maintain her cover. It's what the job required. It's what makes you exceptional at the job, Harrison corrected. Which is why I hope you'll consider staying with the agency in whatever capacity feels right to you. As they prepared to leave the Pentagon, Elena took one last look at the conference room where her life had nearly been destroyed and then miraculously saved. The mahogany panels, the American flag, the polished table. It all looked the same as when she had walked in that morning, but everything had changed. Outside, the Virginia sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Elena breathed deeply, tasting freedom and vindication in the evening air. For the first time in years, she could be completely honest about who she was and what she did for a living. The question now was, what did she want to do next? 3 months later, Elena stood in a classroom at the CIA's training facility in Virginia, addressing a group of new recruits preparing for deep cover assignment. Her reputation within the intelligence community had grown legendary. The analyst who had faced espionage charges rather than blow her cover. The most important thing to understand about deep cover work, she told her students, is that you may never receive public recognition for what you accomplish. Your friends and family may never know the truth about your service. You may even face suspicion and accusations from the very people you're protecting. One student raised her hand. How do you handle that kind of isolation? Elena thought about the lonely years of pretending to be a simple translator, the constant vigilance required to maintain her cover, the relationships that had suffered because she couldn't be completely honest about her life. You remember why you're doing it, she said finally. Every piece of intelligence you gather, every operation you support, every day you maintain your cover, it all serves a larger purpose. You're not just playing a role. You're protecting American lives. Another student asked, what if the worst happened? What if you're accused of the very crimes you're trying to prevent? Elena's expression grew serious. Then you trust the system. You trust that the truth will come out eventually, even if it takes longer than you'd like. And you never, ever compromise an operation to save yourself. After the class, Elena met with Director Harrison in his office overlooking the Virginia countryside. The Petrov operation had been officially closed, with their assets safely extracted from Moscow and relocated under a new identity. Any regrets about how it ended? Harrison asked. Elena considered the question. The operation had been spectacularly successful until its exposure, providing intelligence that had prevented multiple attacks and saved countless lives. The fact that it had ended with her facing espionage charges was unfortunate, but not unprecedented in the intelligence world. None, she said finally. The operation achieved its objectives. Victor is safe, and the intelligence we gathered over 6 years will continue to pay dividends for years to come. Harrison nodded approvingly. Spoken like a true professional. What about your next assignment? Elena had given this considerable thought over the past 3 months. The experience of being falsely accused had been traumatic, but it had also clarified something important for her. She loved the work too much to give it up. I want to stay operational, she said, but maybe something that doesn't require quite so much isolation. I have something in mind, Harrison said with a slight smile. We're developing a new program to train deep cover operatives. We need someone with your experience to help design the curriculum. Elena felt a spark of interest. Training the next generation of intelligence officers, sharing the lessons she had learned through years of dangerous work. It would be a way to multiply her impact while staying connected to the operational side of the agency. I'm interested, she said. Good, because after what you went through, there's no one better qualified to teach others others how to maintain cover under pressure. As Elena left CIA headquarters that evening, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this point. The woman who had walked into that Pentagon conference room 6 months ago as an accused traitor was leaving as a recognized expert in deep cover operation. The accusations had nearly destroyed her, but they had also revealed something important about her character. Under the most extreme pressure imaginable, facing prison and disgrace, she had held firm to her principles and protected the operation she had been entrusted with. Some people might have called it stubbornness. Elena preferred to think of it as loyalty to her country, to her mission, and to the fellow intelligence officers whose lives depended on her keeping their secrets safe. The Pentagon gleamed in the distance, its lights beginning to twinkle as darkness fell over Washington, D.C. Somewhere in that massive building, translators were working late shifts, analyzing foreign communications and protecting American interests around the world. Most of them were exactly what they appeared to be, dedicated linguists serving their country through their expertise with foreign languages. But Elena knew that some of them, like she had been, were something more. Deep cover operatives whose real work remained hidden from their colleagues and whose true contributions might never be publicly acknowledged. Those hidden heroes deserved protection, support, and recognition within the intelligence community, even if the public could never know their names. Elena's new role would help ensure they got it. As she drove home through the Virginia suburbs, Elena thought about the question one of her students had asked. How do you handle the isolation of deep cover work? Her answer had been true but incomplete. Yes, you remember the larger purpose. Yes, you trust the system. But there was something else, something she hadn't mentioned in class. You remember that somewhere, in offices and facilities across the intelligence community, there are people who know the truth about what you do. People who understand the sacrifices you make and the risks you take. People who will fight for you when the worst happens. Elena had learned that lesson the hard way, sitting in that Pentagon conference room as her life crumbled around her. But she had also learned that when the moment came, when she needed it most, those people had shown up. Director Harrison had walked through those oak doors and changed everything with two simple words: stand down. In the world of intelligence, where truth was often the first casualty and loyalty was constantly tested, that kind of support meant everything. It meant that no matter how isolated you felt, no matter how impossible the situation seemed, you were never truly alone. Elena smiled as she pulled into her driveway, already looking forward to tomorrow's classes and the opportunity to pass that lesson on to the next generation of intelligence officers. They would face their own challenges, their own moments of crisis, but they would face them knowing that someone had their back. In a world full of shadows and secrets, that knowledge made all the difference. Have you ever been falsely accused of something serious? Have you ever had to stay silent when speaking up could have cleared your name? Share your story in the comments below and let us know what city you're watching from today. Thank you for watching Secrets Never Told. If this story moved you, please subscribe and share it with others who appreciate tales of hidden heroism and quiet courage. These stories matter, and your support helps us tell them. Until next time, remember that heroes don't always wear uniforms or receive public recognition. Sometimes they wear simple black suits and sit silently in conference rooms, protecting secrets that could save lives, even when it costs them everything.